your LTV is 100. And, LTV is not just a number. Your LTV is not $100. It's crazy reading the news in 2026. There's this narrative that AI is going to replace human jobs, that you can just vibe code solutions into existence until, of course, they do it. They see that these AI tools hallucinate. They make things up out of thin. They're very unpredictable. If me and you were to build a company, we would immediately have all our data. And then at a certain point, it becomes unsustainable to download all this data and jigsaw.
Welcome to the Logbook podcast. I'm your host, Zachary Bernard. You can find me on social at It's Zach B. In each episode, I bring on experts from various industries to learn about their strategies and insights driving extreme business growth. Today, we're joined by Tim Shea, founder and CEO of LatticeWork Insights, a data science and analytical firm that helps retail and DTC brands turn fragmented data pieces into real, actionable business insight. He's spent the last 25 plus years at the intersection of data science, software engineering, and marketing at stints at powerhouses agencies like Razorfish. He's also a 3x startup founder who's raised over $1 million. And over the last 7 years at his company, he's worked with over 70 brands, including the NBA, UFC, Reddit, Facebook, LinkedIn, Pepsi, Nissan, pretty much brands that you've all heard of. He's also been featured in the Ad Week, the Wall Street Journal, and Yahoo Finance. So Tim's been around the block, to put it very simply here. So Tim, welcome aboard. Thank you for taking the time to join us here.
Thanks so much for having me on the pod.
I love it. So you've been around the block, Tim. So I'm really excited to have this conversation on like the data science, technology, marketing side of things. So a lot of like different things that you've been obviously an expert on here. But as this is like an entrepreneurship business podcast, the one main thing I always like to ask anyone that comes on the show is, if you had to like restart your company from ground up, like from zero, the one that you're running right now, because I know you ran a couple of companies, is there like something that you would do differently that you feel a lot of entrepreneurs get like totally wrong?
I mean, it's a great question. I started the company back in 2018, just prior to running the company. Mm-hmm. I was working for someone else. I was selling data products into big media buying agencies. Okay. It was crazy back in 2018. I was getting told no, right, like left and right. Mm-hmm. And I actually had one prospect pull me aside. He goes, Tim, listen, we love your data platform. It seems pretty cool. But we've actually got 20 other data platforms in-house that do slightly different versions of what yours does. Mm. So we're gonna pass, man. Like, we don't even have time to log into these other platforms, never mind create, insights for them. And I remember having this moment of being like, oh, I know we're a SaaS company, but what we'll do is we'll provide you guys a managed service. We'll do some consulting work for you. We'll do the downloading for you. And I remember, security's like dragging you out of the building, at that point. It was like, no, we'll help you build this LatticeWork, and we'll help you, kind of get to the insight. And, they throw you onto the sidewalk and, these giant garbage bags in New York City. And I remember like dusting myself off and having this epiphany, looking around at all these companies. 100% of companies all have this same problem where they've got their core data stuck in all these different SaaS platforms, right? Zach, if me and you were to build a company like today, we would immediately have all our data in like Facebook. We'd be marketing on TikTok. We'd have some influencers, and that's just our CAC, right? And we've got like Shopify and Amazon and Sephora. That's our LTV component. And we've got Klaviyo and NetSuite and the supply chain. And at a certain point, it becomes unsustainable for me and you to download all this data and jigsaw it together and try and come up with what our LTV CAC ratio is, or what our churn and retention and margin numbers are. And so I'm like, damn, dude, like, companies need to build this LatticeWork. They need to join all the data together. And then they need someone to help them get to the insight. We've got 25 years of domain expertise in retail and D2C, e-com and marketing and advertising. And, companies need this sort of like intelligence layer across all of these disciplines, people that are multidisciplinary thinkers to help them, break out of their current growth patterns or really kind of experience that, unlock the growth that they're headed for. That was the epiphany in 2018. And I'll tell you, even in 2026, in this era of AI, and so much has changed in 7-8 years, it's the same exact issue. And if I'd change anything, I would wish I could just double down, triple down, quadruple down on this idea of like consultants, like super smart human beings are the ones that are going to solve all these problems between all these little SaaS platforms that don't really talk to each other. So yeah, I would just really like quadruple down on humans.
That's interesting because everyone I speak to, it's like a different perspective. It's like, hey, you need to double down on, like AI. Like, why are you not using it enough? But you're like opposite of that. Like, I know you obviously do use AI, but you're like, hey, we should be doubling down on people who have that expertise, who are able to support us, who know how to like build the entire infrastructure and like how to map it out efficiently. And
Sure.
you're like so
Totally.
right because there's so many different platforms that we're using, and with like all this data scattered around, like you never have like accurate like numbers, data, and everything, and that literally affects your business because you're taking decisions based on numbers that are not even accurate. So being able to
That's
have
right.
like the correct data, analytics, I mean, it's so important. I feel like a lot of people totally like disregard that, and that's like somewhat where you guys come in here, and
It's
that's
true.
good.
Mhm. No, no, I mean, it is true, and I find that there's sort of two cohorts of companies. There's companies that look at data and analytics as a sort of cost center, and then
Mhm.
there's these elite brands that see the power of data and analytics. Then maybe they struggle with implementing it, but they know that there's some sort of unlock that they're
Yeah.
going to experience, and if done correctly, if you can unlock the power of, you mentioned fragmented data. It's like this giant jigsaw puzzle where a little bit of our data is stored in one place, a little bit of it is stored in another place. Some of it overlaps and conflicts where the numbers are slightly different.
Mhm.
But even if you just use one or two pieces, there's these giant holes in this jigsaw puzzle. And without the expertise and without the actual data in one place, it's really, really hard for companies to unlock their growth.
You need to have like the puzzle builder that can put the puzzle pieces at the right
That's
place here. And going on to like lattice work, because I'd love to
Mhm.
hear for the people that first time, it's like, what does this company do? I love to like understand what's like the process when a big brand, I mean, you work with some pretty like big brands, like I mentioned like a couple like earlier, and I'd love to understand like what kind of that process looks like, and like typically what's usually like the problem that they come to you with, and what does that process look like from getting them to actually like a real solution that actually works like intention like together?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, usually, honestly, the folks that come to us, let's say like smaller brands,
Sure.
folks that are about to raise like a Series A, Series B rounds, like they've created this rocket ship, they're doing really good. And what they find is that like a really important person in their company, it's usually like the chief operating officer, the chief financial officer, CMO sometimes. They're spending like 4, 8 hours a week, like
Hmm.
all day Monday, downloading 20 spreadsheets from 20 different platforms and jigsawing data together to create this report. And so it's this huge time drain, this huge brain drain on the company with this super critical resource is being totally eaten up. And then they get the report together, and God forbid someone asks them a follow-up question. They say, well, we think our LTV CAC ratio is X.
Hmm.
And someone says, well, how is that trending over, month over month?
Yeah.
We're a big VC. We're about to write you a big check. Like, what if we take out those, sorry folks from Black Friday? We gave them a 15% discount to get them in the door. What if we remove them from the cohort? What does the data look like then? And the whole company has to scramble to
Yeah.
put together this brand new report. Meanwhile, the VCs are sort of like, tapping their thumbs and trying to figure out, hey, does this company have what it takes to take on additional capital to really launch this company?
Hmm.
And many companies fail at this stage. And this is oftentimes when we encounter them as they'll bring us in. They say, you know what, it's time for us to grow up. It's time for us to build this data pipeline. We need a different lens on the business, a different point of view on the business. So we'll come in and we'll build a data pipeline. We'll build a data warehouse for them. We'll model all those important metrics for them, LTV, CAC, retention, margins, and so forth. We'll get it all in a dashboard that's interactive that they can ask follow-up questions for. And then we'll layer on what we call an intelligence layer. We'll help them upgrade their data culture so that they can speak data, they're fluent in data, they know when to go to the data team, they know when they can answer questions themselves,
Hmm.
and really help them with things like A/B testing and growth strategy and vision and so forth. And the companies that invest in this process, they see this inflection point in their growth. This whole set of things are just unlocked for them.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of companies, they feel that they have like that the data covered. They're like, hey, like we have a couple spreadsheets, things are organized. Maybe they have a dashboard running, or maybe they have someone on like the ops side of things, as you mentioned, like every Monday, like they're just scrambling to get things
Monday
every
morning madness.
every together. But like from like your perspective, like where you sit, what's kind of going like under the hood that makes like that this false sense of like security, and like what does it actually cost them for people to realize? Because I feel a lot of the companies, they only realize that a couple years later down the road, when there's been this big big like return on investment that they've been missing, or like efficiency in like their entire operations. And I feel that's a big hurdle for a lot of people that they don't even know they have.
Yeah, exactly. I think that there is this false sense of security. There's so many SaaS platforms out there. It's hard to go to someone's website and understand quickly what this platform does or does not do. They make outrageous claims
Oh
as to
yeah.
what they. There's many platforms. Let's say Triple Whale is a good example. Triple Whale is a great company when it comes to sort of like marketing attribution.
Hmm.
They'll flash LTV on screen. Your LTV is 100. And, LTV is not just a number, it's a sort of story. So, we'll look at that number and we'll say, okay, well, we can pretty confidently say your LTV is not $100 without knowing anything about your company because that number includes people who you acquired in the last 2 weeks. It includes people that you gave the 50% discount to on Black Friday.
Hmm.
It doesn't tell a story about how long it takes you to get from purchase one to purchase two. It doesn't tell a story about whether you were profitable on the first purchase. Many companies go into debt on the first purchase, hoping that the
Yeah.
second purchase will pay down that debt. So that CAC payout period is super, super important. And so we'll take those LTV numbers and we'll unpack it and we'll show them this story of the customer journey, of
Hmm.
customer behavior. And then we'll say, actually, the predicted LTV for a customer like this, you get a small, medium, and large type of customer, and the predicted LTV of this customer is actually $200. You've only got them at 100. So there's $100 of headroom in there you
Yeah.
could get them to, and it's just waiting to be unlocked. And so I think when folks see that for themselves, then they say, "Oh, now I see the power of, data and analytics." We're talking about ROAS in advertising, the sort of
Yeah.
return on advertising spend. We think if there's a return on analytics spend, people
Mm.
should really be thinking about, there should be a 2, 3, 4, 5, 10x return on the investments that they make in analytics. And we just
Yeah.
we need to show them the ocean to see how that works.
I mean, just with that example that you gave, like you said, like a platform. What's the name again? I forgot. Is it Whale?
Triple Whale, great folks, really
Yeah.
good at marketing distribution, but I think many of these platforms distill these metrics down to just a number on screen. That's just like this
Yeah.
is a very misleading metric, guys.
Oh yeah, I've seen it like on like X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. Like I've seen it multiple times. I just forgot the exact name, but it's a good example, like you mentioned, where maybe you're gonna have someone that's gonna show like a $100 like LTV, and then you dive a little bit deeper, and then you realize it's $200. So if you had just stayed with that perception, it's 100. Maybe you're gonna have certain marketing effort to make sure you get to that 100, and then but you could actually get 200 if you did it properly. You knew your analytics. So you talk about like ROAS in the terms of not ad spend, but also analytics spend. That's like 2x LTV if you actually knew that's the LTV that you had. And a lot of people just don't know about it. So it's more so about, I mean, the right platforms, but also having like that, a good cohesion, like a combination of them, like having a system that intertwines like every single platform they use in an efficient manner. Because I believe Triple Whale does take like a couple like platform that you have, but it's not like next level or like a system specifically tailored for a specific company, because everyone obviously has different needs. There's probably a little bit of correlation and similarities, but
Right.
I think that's like a big part missing from like what you were saying here.
Yeah, and I think a big objection we often get is people say, "Oh, we have an analyst in house. We got the super smart kid. He majored in economics. He's a whiz at Excel."
Mhm.
And and they say, "Gosh, LatticeWork Insights. You guys are been in the game for a long time. You guys are really expensive." And so usually we'll unpack like a couple case studies with like, listen, this company invested a lot of money into building this stack. So just it's not just one person sitting in Excel. They've got this modern data stack now, and they've upgraded their data culture. So now everyone across the organization feels empowered to speak data to that everyone in the organization is moving towards one true north metric, rallying people around this idea that like
Hmm.
can we all agree that like today is Wednesday? Everyone says, okay, great. Today is Wednesday. Like, can we all agree we're trying to like move LTV up and we're trying to shorten the time to second purchase? Okay, great.
Hmm.
Oh, can we all agree that we're going to A/B test just towards that one metric? And that we're going to move the company towards shortening the time between two purchases. So it says, great. Now we can do the hard work of actually moving the company forward. And those are the big unlocks that people see where they're like, hey, you know what? The 10, 20, 30, $50,000 that we spent on LatticeWork Insights has made us $250,000. We didn't see all this churn in the same way before. We fixed our churn problem. We didn't see how much more LTV we could be capturing. This is a huge unlock for us. So yeah, so it's a very common objection that we get, but something we try and unpack pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I feel it's about like creating a data driven culture as well. It's like everyone,
For
again,
sure.
as you mentioned, like they're all working to that true north where they have like one objective, one KPI they're trying to meet, and having like more accurate data obviously makes that a bit easier here. And I know we talked a little bit about like AI like earlier, and I don't want to get back to that because with like data, I mean, I'm sure you've seen that there's so many new platforms you can use like AI within like your spreadsheets, like Excel makes everything. I mean, like investment bankers, like you'll see on like X or Twitter sometimes, be like, oh, investment bankers are not going to have a job anymore, like analysts and stuff like that with AI. But there's this narrative that's going to make like everything easier, that some brands will be able to just plug it in. It will handle most like the heavy lifting. But what does that actually look like on the ground when the company tries to implement that, like an AI driven solution without the right foundation in place? Kind of curious to see like what happens in practice because I have a feeling it just becomes a mess if you don't do it correctly.
Yeah, I mean, you stole my answer. I mean, it's very difficult. I think that there's this. It's crazy reading the news in
Yeah.
2026, and it's crazy being on social media, Twitter and LinkedIn. There's this narrative that there's going to be massive unemployment, that
Hmm.
AI is going to replace human jobs, that you can just vibe code solutions into existence.
Yeah.
And it's wild because we've all interacted with these platforms. I think maybe everyone on the planet has had that existential panic. They stared into the void and they were like, wow, maybe some of this is true. Until, of course, they do it. Until,
Hmm.
of course, they try to push something into production and they see that these AI tools hallucinate. They make things up out of thin. They're very unpredictable. There is a whole different lattice work that needs to be built in order to support agentic applications.
Hmm.
There are agentic workflows. There is memory. There is the models themselves. There is this idea now of computer use and browser use that are taking over Windows and doing things on your behalf. There's guardrails that you need to put in place so that it doesn't just go rogue and mass email a bunch of people the wrong type of message. And so we've gotten, I would say my platform or my pipeline has sort of doubled in the last 2 years, where one part of my platform is my traditional business. And the other part of my pipeline are people showing up at my doorstep with vibe coded applications that are almost there. They're almost ready to go into production. And we look, well, has anyone read this code? Have you guys looked over what's actually been built by these AI agents?
Yeah.
So yeah, well, I don't know. We got lost in the sauce, right? We were looking at LangChain and we Langsmith, and we had this Pinecone database, and we had this. We kept upgrading the Claude models along the way, and it's a big fat mess. We think we're about 80% done. We're like, you should probably start by throwing it all in the trash and starting over. And so I think that this is true across any discipline.
Mm.
Is that it's really, really, really good at finance if you're not good at finance. It's
Mm.
really, really good at medicine if you're not a doctor, right?
Yeah.
People get really excited about it, build software, but they're not software developers. And so there's this weird phenomenon that the AIs really do need humans in the middle. They really need humans sort of working the keyboard and kind of ushering it, step by step by step.
Yeah.
It's really difficult and frustrating place for folks to be because, again, there is this narrative, whether you're reading the Wall Street Journal or whether you're listening to some TikTok influencer of being like, AI is here. The agentic future has arrived. Everyone's making 100 grand a year,
Mm.
spinning open claw servers and sending mass email campaigns and just they're printing money. And the reality is those people are selling coaching sessions. They're
Yeah.
not printing money, sending mass emails. And so there is this harsh reality that a lot of companies run into when they realized that building agentic applications is really hard and really unpredictable. And you need really good software developers and finance people and operations people to actually keep them on track.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen so many examples of people like vibe coding stuff and being like a total mess. And I mean, we can take it from you. See, I mean, I know you run like your own like event for specifically agentic like AI and like LA. You guys at San Francisco too, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah,
Right.
like New York coming up in May. So
That's right.
I know you've obviously been in like software engineering too. So you haven't started vibe coding like yesterday, some application with Claude and then call it a day. But yeah, I mean, I literally had a training with our team this morning. It was like, so one of the things you have to keep in mind is AI is often wrong. Double check it always. In my experience, it's never right. Like there's always, it's right in some capacity, but there's always going to be like some quality assurance that you have to run on the back end. And I feel with like software, it's more than just quality assurance. Like you have to go through the entire thing to make sure that everything looks good here. And yeah, I mean, I think it's something that a lot of companies are going to learn. You can't just try to do it yourself. Sometimes you will have to work with consultant and experts. I mean, I feel that's why yourselves. Why if I'm not an expert in something, I'm going to go hire someone that actually knows what they're talking about because they can help us with that. And I feel that's obviously very important here. But
Well,
talking about like investment and everything, I'd love to go back to the ROAS aspect of things because you mentioned earlier. And I mean, I can see like how it can be perceived, but a lot of founders, they're going to treat the analytics more as like a cost of doing business rather than something that you're like investing that's going to actually produce like an actual return, like marketing, for example. And I love to hear like how you think about the actual ROI of like analytics spend and how should like a brand be measuring whether that investment is working for them? Because obviously anyone that's investing into something, they'll be able to want to see like some data, KPIs, numbers, seeing like how it's actually performing. And I feel that's probably one big question that a lot of founders are going to have.
it is a big question that they have, and honestly, look, being in the game for 25 years, we have a lot of empathy of the other things
Yeah.
that brands are struggling with. We have a lens where like data analytics is everything. We forget that there's people that are giant cardboard boxes are showing up from the docks, and a human being is opening the cardboard box and taking product out and looking at a paper PO and like reading the numbers. We forget that that's like really hard,
Hmm.
tedious manual work where technology has not yet made an impact on their lives. We realize that marketing is like an art, finance and operations is an art, and that we can't just come in with a hammer looking for a nail, trying to solve everything. But indeed, there are these major. A lot of people say, Tim, you know, the era of big data is over and the era of human intuition has arrived. What about my intuition about the placement of my product in a store or the messaging, the way we speak to our customers? And I say, great, you're totally right. Well, you're totally right. The data has no business chiming in on those things. But just real quick follow-up question. Which campaign last year performed better? I know you have an intuition about which one can perform better, but the one that was wildly successful from the top line, like what was the margin? Was the margin smaller because you spent so much on marketing and you gave so many discounts? And those people that you acquired on that tentpole event, where you spent so much money on marketing, did they come back? Right? Because like a lot of times, like on Black Friday, let's say most e-commerce companies, the average customer or the average e-commerce customer, um, about 80% of their customers never come back. Okay. Average e-commerce company, 80% of their customers never come back. On Black Friday, it's like 90. It's like 95. They're bargain hunters. They're very fickle. They're maybe would have bought in October or December, but you gave them the discount in November. So just wanted to, gut check with all you smart marketing folks, like which one performed better? Because you may have just given a huge discount to a bunch of unloyal customers who are never going to come back until next year. And meanwhile, this one event that didn't seem so groundbreaking, those people buy all the time. That's your core audience. And so I think that like intuition has a huge part of the puzzle. As data people, we have intuitions as well. But there are these times where we need to look at the sort of cold, hard facts, where companies are like, if we could just hit this one margin milestone, if we could just hit this one growth milestone, we could unlock all this venture capital We could do that big promotion we've been looking to do with Sephora. If we could just do this one thing. And you're like, well, intuition's only going to get you so far. We need to be able to measure the efficacy of all these things, make sure that people are A/B testing and experimenting and being really honest about what's working and not working. And until they have a data and analytical lens on those activities, a lot of that activity can go undiscovered.
Yeah. And I feel like because you're like a data person, like intuitively, like you're already thinking about these types of things, but so many founders, business owners, they're not thinking about that. I mean, like it's so true. Like we track like all our KPIs, like all our outbound, like for the past like 3 years. Like I have day by day all of our KPIs. And I feel that's like a very important thing because I can see like, okay, at this point in time, this was performing well, this was not performing well. We did this, this, this. I feel not everyone tracks those numbers. They don't track these tests and everything. And when you do, you have a much clearer picture of where you're going, where you're trying to go, and that true north, as you mentioned before, like your North Star.
No, totally. I think as an entrepreneur, you're very close to your business. You're very passionate about your business. I remember I had a great conversation with my wife. I went to Cannes, I went to the Cannes Lion Festival. And I was so excited when I came back. I was all tan and I've been sitting on the beach sipping rosé and I networked with all these people. You got to go there for like 7 days. You got to drop like, 10 racks just to get out there and be part of the whole charade. And my wife goes, so how much money did you make? How many business cards did you get? And I was like, babe, you don't understand. Like the spectacle of Cannes on the beach was just amazing. And she goes, uh-huh. And so how many clients did you get? And you need that gut check sometimes as a founder where you're like, oh, right. So the ROAS was zero potentially. I spent $10,000 and I maybe got nothing out of it. Or maybe this was just a top of funnel exercise where now I have some more brand recognition, but it was not a bottom of funnel exercise where I was, printing money off of this activity. So as a founder, I have a lot of empathy with what other founders go through.
Yeah, that's fair. It's kind of funny that you mentioned that example because so many people are going to be spending on going on trips and everything, and then they're like, kind of forgot to network with people that could be potential clients here. I just enjoyed the weather too much and the mimosa or whatever you want to call them, the rosé. So it's always an important one here. And another thing I'd really be kind of curious to hear is because some brands, they're going to have a technical team. They might have an engineering team, maybe like an engineer, analytics person, or maybe even like a technical co-founder. They might feel like they got like everything, like the data piece covered in-house, but there's kind of like a gap that usually exists. And I'd love to understand like what's kind of stopping them from even being able to see that gap. And then like from there, like it's already
Yeah,
slowing them
look,
down.
I think you're asking a great question. I think particularly with bigger companies, right? So I say big companies and small companies, they suffer from the same problem of data being spread out all over the place. But let's be honest, a lot of these young e-commerce companies don't have a technology team. They don't have a data team. They're selling, mushroom infused, fizzy water, or, they're selling apparel, and data scientists have no place in that environment. Bigger companies, maybe they've already built some sort of lattice work. They've already built this sprawling data pipeline. They've already built a huge proliferation of reports where many stakeholders are logging into sort of Tableau and they're asking Claude agents questions. And for those companies, a lot of times my conversations with them are around leadership. Is they say, hey, we have a lot of these great folks in house and they've got, 5, 10 years of experience. There's a need for us to bring in some of the adults. And we need someone who's got like 25 years of experience working with some of the biggest brands in the world, biggest ad agencies on Madison Avenue. And we need to help upskill everybody. We need to think about some of like the old school, mundane blocking and tackling. We need to think about unit tests. We need to think about actually statistically relevant A/B tests. We need to help folks upgrade data culture. I think that there's this sentiment at a lot of places where when you're about to go in to a big meeting with stakeholders or brief Wall Street, they say, oh, we built the deck, but before we finish, let's check in with the data team. Let's check in with, maybe the data team can whip up a quick slide, slide 19 of 20. And we're like, well, hold on a second. We should check in with the data team in the beginning of the process. They should be woven into the DNA of everything that they do. And let's be fair, to marketing and operations and finance people, data and technology people are nerds. I'm a nerd. I get it. Many data and technology people have failed to acquire the finesse, the acumen, the vocabulary to be invited back to many of these meetings. They show up with they used to have these things called pocket protectors, but they show up with the proverbial pocket protector to the meeting, and everyone's just like, who brought the nerds to this meeting? And so there's a little bit of upskilling of hey guys, you guys need to speak the language of, stakeholders, of Wall Street, of LTV CAC, and don't show up talking about the latest, coolest, nerdy gadget that you guys put into the data pipeline. So I think leadership tends to be a big thing that these bigger companies gravitate towards.
Yeah, no, that's kind of hilarious because you need to like, and I mean, yeah, it's so true. Because I mean, I remember I had someone else on our podcast, probably one of our first guests, and he mentioned like, yeah, with engineering and like marketing, for example, there's always like a disconnect. And like what we're really, really proud of is we've been able to like bridge that disconnect. Like when you're pushing out like products, you want to make sure that both teams are in like in the known. And I feel that's like a bit similar for like brands too, for like the engineering, data, maybe not engineering, but like marketing, data, they're like somewhat not too like really close to each other. And that's like a big mistake. I mean, the good example you mentioned, like they're going to VCs and then at the end of the presentation, then they start like building out, like get the data team in here. And then you realize like, hey, probably we should have added them before we started building this entire thing out. And I feel like a lot of people just totally forget about that.
That's right.
That's like a big
That's
thing.
right.
And just for like other brands, let's keep it a bit more like general. Like it could be actually, let's start with smaller brands and then we can go a bit to like the bigger like enterprise or so companies. But I'd love to understand for like any company, they're like, hey, we want to get our data in check. We've done a couple things with the spreadsheet, the dashboard. It's working fine, but we're starting to see like a few leaks that are going through like the cracks and we want to optimize, be more efficient. Is there like maybe 2-3 bullet points, a couple things you say like, hey, today, this is what you should be looking at to be able to get ahead of that to make sure it doesn't continue leaking further?
Yeah. I mean, I think for younger brands, if you're at the sort of like, 20, 30, $50 million in revenue range, many of them start to feel that they've hit a plateau. Maybe their top line is still increasing, but they feel like they've hit a plateau where it's really expensive to acquire new customers. Or they see that churn at the bottom and they see that, hey, gosh, 80% of our customers never show up again. All we're doing is giving, Mark Zuckerberg more and more money to bring more people into the funnel, and 80% of them are leaking out the bottom. And so usually they hit this, frustrating point where either their key person, like one of the smartest people in the company, is stuck in spreadsheet hell. And that's honestly when people will reach out as like, I can't do it anymore. I can't spend all day every Monday building these reports manually. Or they say, man, our ROAS is just stuck. Our churn and retention rates are just stuck. And gosh, we really feel like we're so close on the fundraising front. If we could just do X. We're about to get Erewhon's attention. There's a line wrapped around the corner to get into Whole Foods and Erewhon, right? We're so close about making the case to be on their, in their shelves. Like if we could just do this one thing. And so it always feels like there is a feeling of stuckness where a key operator, COO, CFO, CMO, head of VP of growth, just feels like I need an unlock. I need a new lens on the business. I got to get my Mondays back. And that's usually when they reach out to us, when they're trying to achieve some inflection point in their growth, but they just feel like they can't.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's probably a pretty common occurrence where you see that like pretty often like happening with those companies here. And I mean, like a big advice, I mean, I'm sure you've heard it so many times, but I mean, I would say it comes more from like marketers, but like just spend more money. Just like put more money into your ads and you'll get more customers out of it. But that advice, I mean, it's not technically flawed, but in a capacity, you're just going to be putting money in a machine that's leaky without optimizing it first and ensure there's more efficiency and you're getting more for your buck out of it versus just giving more money to Zuck, which obviously no one likes to do that in the first place here. So that's more for like the smaller brands, but for like the bigger one, maybe it's like enterprise or anything like that. I'm assuming these types of brands usually will maybe have a data team, maybe have like an analytics person, engineering or anything like that. And I love to kind of understand like what's kind of the difference because some of them do have a team in-house, but maybe they're just not doing it efficiently as they should be.
Yeah, I think a lot of bigger brands too suffer from this kind of FOMO problem where they see lots of maybe younger, more nimble brands doing cool stuff with influencers or activations, and they say, "Gosh, we think we found the solution to all of our problems. We're going to get Charlie D'Amelio to do a TikTok video for us." That's maybe a dated example. We're going to get Addison Rae to come in and like she's just going to crush it on the numbers front. And I think that like, data people can react to that and say, great, we'll build a dashboard in support of the Addison Ray activation. We're like, okay, guys, what you've just described here is not an A/B test. You've set up an A test. You've come up with a new idea and you're just going to try it and see what happens. But like, there's no statistical rigor to this experiment. And I know that sounds like hair splitting and annoying and like nerdy, but like the reality is like throwing spaghetti at the wall is merely that. It's very hard to learn whether Addison Ray caused this big spike in sales or just, we just had a good month. And you really don't know. Maybe that Facebook ads were overperforming that month. So I think this statistical rigor is a big piece of the puzzle. It feels sort of like annoying and sort of tedious and hair splitting to say it to folks. But I think that there's that, having the expertise to rally a group of people around this common idea, like we're going to do it, structure the test this way. And everyone's going to be open-minded. And if a test does not work, it's okay. We've learned something. And now next month, we're going to do it with a different influencer. If it does work, let's double down on that, right? How much should we double down or triple down? Great question. Let's take a look at the data and let's sort of talk it through. So I think that, vocabulary, and I think getting those marketing and data people to sort of get along, right? So they can speak the same language to each other, is a really hard thing to do. But it's something I've been focusing on just forever. So yeah, this trying to get like unicorn generalists or left brain, right brain thinkers. And those are the ones that can be really effective in breaking through.
Yeah. And I mean, there's always this disconnect with like the marketing data side of things, which I mean, like I would think it's like one in one. I mean, if you're marketing, you're going to have data, you're going to have to look at it and make decisions based off of that. So you kind of need a data team or someone that actually knows what to look for in the data. But it's interesting that you mentioned like, oh, maybe we're just having a good month. Maybe the ads are just performing very well this month, or maybe there's this other factor that we don't control that affected our sales. And I mean, I feel that's like a common thing. You can't control every single factor. There's always going to be different things that comes into play. But what you can do is control your data, make sure it's organized, look at it, and then make decisions based on the data. As you mentioned, you can't just throw spaghetti at the wall, see what sticks, and then just make other decisions based off of that. I mean, it might work, but in my experience, it's not going to be a long-term solution that you should be doing it every time. Just throw it at the wall here. But I love that. Anything else that you would add to that? That I just want to make sure there's nothing else that you think is relevant for like other brands if they're looking to just be more organized on the data side of things.
Yeah, look, 8 years ago, I started with this thesis of like data scientists that speak advertising, and that's how I was going to build my team. That the sort of chasm between data and marketing people was so wide, and I wanted to be the one that built that bridge. In many ways, in that 8 year span, the chasm has just gotten wider. It's just gotten harder and harder to get those people speaking the same language and firing on all cylinders in the same way. And I get the same question every time. Is it's like, Tim, this is interesting work that you're doing. You should just build a SaaS platform that solves this. And there's this great, for all the nerds out there, there's this great comic called XKCD. You're familiar with XKCD?
Not sure.
It's just a little goofy little cartoon, and the guy has this one called Standards. Two stick figures talking to each other, and they're like, it's so frustrating. There's 13 standards for this one thing, and the other guy says, what we should do is we should make another standard to end all this proliferation of standards. And the next thing is two people talking. The guy goes, I can't believe there's 14 standards for the same thing. And I'm like, look. Every time you check, every year you check how many MarTech platforms are there. There's 10,000, there's 15,000, there's 20,000. Guess what? There's still this huge demand for smart human beings to come in and create the sticks and glue between them and to be able to tell do cross-platform storytelling. And that problem's not going away. AI is not going to solve it. It's just going to make that proliferation worse. And so very eager to see what the agentic future holds for all of us. But yeah, like smart human beings is the solution for most of these problems.
Yeah. And I feel like you talked about like platforms, but there's always going to be new platforms coming out and you have to have different integration. And then even if you build new platforms, have all of them together, there's always going to be new things, and we're never going to be able to like fully keep up. And I feel like, as you mentioned, that's where like human come in, which I thought was
Right.
interesting because everyone talks about AI replacing us, and then you have like this different perspective. You're like, no, like you need like humans to be able to make this work efficiently. So no,
Right.
that was really great, Tim. I really appreciate you coming on the show here. And for anyone that wants to get in touch with you, because then you have the LinkedIn, you have the website, you're active in a couple places. Where should people look for here?
People should check out latticeworkinsights.com. You can reach me, Tim, at latticeworkinsights.com. We run an event series
Yeah,
called Agentic Play. You can go and register for events. We'll put a link in the
sure.
comments. So we do events here in Los Angeles. We did 5 events last year, 3 in LA, 2 in San Francisco. We got 2 in San Francisco coming up in the spring, one big one in New York, another big tentpole event in the summer. Agentic LA is just an awesome,
Yeah.
medium to bring smart folks together to talk about, hey, let's match up the hype with what people are really seeing in the trenches. Like, is this really, the Silicon is what Silicon Valley telling us actually happening? Let's hear it. I like to bring smart folks to speak and smart folks to listen and bring them together to network afterwards. It's been a really, really big success. So yeah, Agentic LA is a big thing that we're working on to bring smart practitioners together.
No, but we're gonna put all that in the description because I know we talked previously and there was a place you could register for it. So we'll put all of that in there. We'll put the LinkedIn, the website, and everything like that. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us on. To your listeners, if you've enjoyed this episode, make sure to leave a thumbs up, subscribe, leave a review, reach out to Tim if you need help with your data here. And then until then, keep pushing and see you in the next one.